Hey everyone, and welcome back to another deep dive.
Yeah.
Today we are looking into a recent financial scandal that's been making headlines in India. Looks like we've got some articles here all about a guy named Ketan Parekh. And from what I understand, you want to get to the bottom of what happened, who exactly was involved, and why it all mattered.
Yeah, it's a pretty interesting case.
Well, before we get into all that, I think it's worth pointing out that this Ketan Parekh guy, this isn't his first time running afoul of the law.
Right.
He was actually a major player in that stock market scam back in 2001.
Ah, right. The price rigging scam.
Yeah, price rigging. So for those who don't know, that's basically when you artificially inflate or deflate stock price to make a profit.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that whole mess, he was actually banned from trading for 14 years. But looks like he's back in the hot seat again.
Yeah, it seems that way. And this time it all revolves around something called front running. You know, front running is kind of like, it's a bit like peeking at your opponent's cards in a poker game before you actually place your bet.
Oh, okay.
So you are using non-public information, or NPI, about a large trade that's about to happen, and then using that information to make a profit.
Ah, so in other words, insider trading.
Exactly. And in this particular case, the alleged mastermind, surprise, surprise, is our old friend Ketan Parekh.
Okay, so we've got ourselves a repeat offender here, a guy using insider information to try to get ahead. So who else is in on this scheme? I see here in the articles a mention of a Singapore-based trader, a guy named Rohit Salgaonkar. What's his part in all of this?
Well, based on what we know so far, Salgaonkar seems to be the source of the NPI. So basically, India's regulatory body for the securities market, SEBI, they're alleging that Salgaonkar was feeding information to Parekh about a big US-based fund. The articles call it the big client, and the big client's large stock orders in the Indian market.
So hold on, let me get this straight. Salgaonkar was giving Parekh information about what the big client was going to do in the market, and Parekh then used this information to, game the system?
Pretty much, yeah. The investigation shows that Parekh was actually working with a whole network of 6 different entities. They're calling them front runners.
Front runners.
Yeah, and through coded messages and phone calls, Parekh would basically instruct these front runners to buy or sell certain stocks.
Ah, so they were doing the actual buying and selling based on Parekh's instructions.
Right, and he was timing it all to happen just before the big client placed their large order.
So they were taking advantage of the big client's moves, knowing which way the price would go. Okay, that makes sense. But why the coded messages? Wouldn't there be, like, a record of their conversations anyway?
Well, it seems Parekh was trying to stay out of the spotlight to avoid any, direct involvement. So when he was talking with these front runners, he'd use code names like Jack or Boss. That's what they found anyway. The investigation uncovered a bunch of WhatsApp chats and call records that seemed to back that up.
So this whole thing was like a secret club operating under everyone's noses. So how did SEBI even catch wind of this operation in the first place? How'd they figure it out?
Well, SEBI's got some pretty advanced systems that monitor all the trading activity going on.
Right.
And they must have noticed some unusual patterns, probably linked to the big client's trades, and that's what tipped them off. They decided to dig deeper, and, their investigation, it took a while, a full 30 months. But they eventually did a search and seizure operation going after all the people and companies involved.
30 months, that's some dedication right there.
Yeah, and that's how they got all the communication records, all the evidence to build their case.
Okay, so SEBI has all this evidence, but what's the damage? What kind of impact did this scheme have?
Well, SEBI's saying these frontrunners made illegal gains of 38.7 crore. 0.7 crore, yeah. And then if you add in Salgaonkar's referral fee from the big client, that was another 27.07 crore.
Whoa, so in total we're talking about what, almost 66 crore?
65.77 crore to be exact.
Wow, that's like, what, almost 8 million US dollars?
Yeah, it's a big chunk of change.
So SEBI has the evidence, they know how much money was made illegally. What are they going to do about it? They can't just, let it slide, right?
Oh, absolutely not. SEBI's taking action, and they're not messing around.
Okay, good.
They've issued show cause notices to all 22 individuals and entities involved, basically demanding an explanation for their shady trading activities.
Makes sense.
They're also freezing bank accounts, impounding assets, the whole 9 yards.
So they're making sure that Parekh and his buddies can't touch those illegal profits.
Exactly. They're putting a stop to it.
Good. That's good to hear. But here's what's been bugging me. We talked about this earlier, how this isn't Parekh's first rodeo when it comes to market manipulation. What I don't get is why resort to front running this time, especially after that whole price rigging conviction.
Yeah, that's an interesting
I
point.
think he'd learned his lesson.
It does make you wonder about his motives. But if you look at his past in the 2001 scam, he was very directly involved, manipulating stock prices himself. This time, it's like he's trying to be more hands-off, pulling strings from behind the scenes, using that network of associates and coded communication to try and distance himself.
Oh, so he's trying to cover his tracks better, being sneakier.
Yeah, like he's trying to be the puppet master, but it seems SEBI was still able to put the pieces together and expose the whole scheme.
Well, good for SEBI. But now I'm curious about these front runners, the ones who are actually doing the buying and selling for Parekh. Who are they? How do you even get them involved in all this?
Well, that's where things get even more interesting, and it's something we're going to dig into after the break.
So before we dive into those front runners, you mentioned that SEBI was taking action to recover the illegal gains, and you used the word impounding. Can you maybe break that down for us a little bit? What does that actually mean in this situation?
Sure, yeah. Impounding basically means that SEBI can freeze any assets, money, property, anything like that, if they believe it was obtained through illegal activities.
Okay.
So in this case, they've impounded that 65.77 crore, which, if you remember, is the total amount of illegal gains they've identified in this whole scheme.
Right.
This prevents Parekh and his associates from accessing those funds. They can't touch it. They can't benefit from it, at least for now.
So it's like a legal timeout for that money while everything gets sorted out.
Yeah, exactly. A good way to put it.
So what about Parekh and his crew? Are they facing any, personal consequences, like jail time?
Oh, for sure. SEBI has taken some pretty strong measures to punish them.
Like what?
Well, for starters, Parekh, Salvyokar, and one of the key facilitators in the scheme, they've all been banned from the market.
Banned. Completely.
Completely. It means they can't trade, they can't participate in any market activities. They're essentially cut off.
Wow, that's gotta sting, especially for Parekh. I mean, the guy's already been banned once before.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it?
What?
Why would someone risk so much, knowing what the consequences could be?
Maybe it's the thrill of it all. The allure of easy money. Or maybe he just thinks he's smarter than everyone else, Thinks he can always outsmart the system.
Could be. It's hard to say what goes on in someone's mind like that.
Yeah, true. But regardless of his motivations, SEBI's definitely shown they're paying attention and they're ready to act.
Absolutely.
Okay, so let's get back to those front runners. You said they were the ones actually carrying out Parekh's instructions, actually buying and selling the stocks. Who are these entities? How did Parekh even get them involved in this whole scheme?
Well, it seems the frontrunners are a mix of individuals and companies. SEBI's still looking into the specifics of their identities, but it's clear they played a crucial role in the success of this whole thing.
Right.
Parekh probably leveraged some existing relationships, maybe promised them quick profits, told them there was minimal risk.
Yeah, I bet. I mean, front running, if you've got the right information, it can be pretty lucrative.
Absolutely. It's like being given the winning lottery numbers before the draw.
Tempting, but also very illegal.
Exactly.
We've been talking about this case a lot from a legal standpoint, but I think it's important to also think about the ethical side of things, right? Because front running, it just feels like it goes against the basic principles of fair play in the market.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
It's all about transparency.
Exactly. This whole thing about using insider information, it really erodes trust in the market. It creates this uneven playing field where some people have access to confidential information and they can profit from it at the expense of everyone else.
It's like playing a game where the other person secretly knows all the rules, but you don't.
Yeah, a rigged game.
And in a game like the stock market, where people's livelihoods, their savings, their retirements are on the line, that can be devastating.
Absolutely. And not just for individuals, but for the whole market,
That's why it's so important to have regulators like SEBI to make sure things are fair and everyone's playing by the rules.
Right. They play a critical role, but they can't do it alone,
What do you mean?
Building an ethical and trustworthy market, it's going to take a collective effort. It's going to take everyone, from individual investors to those big institutions, to make it happen.
So it's not just about catching the bad guys after the fact, but about creating a system where this kind of thing is less likely to happen in the first place.
Exactly.
But how do we do that? How do we build that kind of culture in a system that's so driven by profit and competition?
That's a really good question. And it's something we're going to discuss in more detail as we continue this deep dive.
It's amazing how deep this whole front-running thing goes. We've seen how this network of people was able to manipulate the market for their own gain. But it makes you wonder, how do we stop something like this from happening again? Can we actually build a market where everyone plays by the rules?
It's a tough question. No easy answers. But I think it starts by recognizing that market integrity, it's not just SEBI's job, it's everyone's responsibility.
Okay, so what does that look like in practice? What can we actually do to make the market more resilient, less susceptible to this kind of manipulation?
Well, first off, I think we need to strengthen regulations and enforcement. SEBI's doing a good job, but there's always room for improvement. The financial world's constantly changing, and regulations need to keep up with all the new ways people try to game the system.
So constantly updating the rule book.
Right. But rules alone aren't enough. We also need to foster a culture of ethics, of compliance within the industry itself. It's not just about following the rules. It's about doing what's right, even when no one's watching. Encouraging people to report wrongdoing, to prioritize integrity over profits.
So a system where people feel comfortable speaking up, where ethical behavior is actually rewarded. But how do you do that? I mean, this is a very competitive industry.
Education is key. We need to teach investors, both big and small, about the dangers of market manipulation and why ethical conduct is so important.
Financial literacy.
Exactly. The more investors know about how the market works, the better they can protect themselves. They can demand transparency and accountability.
Makes sense.
And let's not forget about technology. SEBI's already using things like data analytics and AI to catch suspicious trading patterns. Imagine a digital watchdog that's constantly monitoring the markets, sniffing out any hint of manipulation.
That's pretty cool. So it sounds like what we need is a multi-pronged approach. Stronger regulations, ethical conduct, investor education, and all the latest technology.
Exactly. It's a complex challenge, but I do believe that by working together, the regulators, the industry professionals, the investors, we can build a financial system that's stronger and more resilient. A system that's fair, transparent, and accessible to everyone.
A system built on trust. Well, this has been an eye-opening deep dive for sure. We've uncovered how Parekh's scheme worked, we've talked about the ethics involved, and we've even discussed ways to make the financial system more trustworthy.
It really has been a fascinating look at the challenges and opportunities in financial regulation, but it also leaves us with a lot to think about. What will SEBI do next? Will Parekh try to make another comeback? And how will technology shape the future of market surveillance?
These are all great questions, and I hope our listeners will explore the source material and come to their own conclusions.
After all, an informed and engaged public is the best defense against those who would try to manipulate the system for their own gain.
Thank you for watching. See you in the next deep dive.